A lot of veterans think that getting approved for a VA loan is one simple process. Apply, get approved, buy the house, and you're done. That would be nice, but that's not really how it works. Because there are actually different ways that a VA loan file can get approved depending on your income, credit documentation, and how strong the overall file is. In this video, I'm breaking down 4 different ways to get your VA loan approved so that you can better understand what lenders are actually looking at behind the scenes. If we haven't met yet, my name is William Ware, the Loan Caddy. I'm a GWAT veteran, currently still serving the Army Reserve, and for the last few years I've been a mortgage broker specializing in VA loans. And this video is part of my VA Loan Masterclass series where I break down VA loan topics in plain English so that you can make smart decisions without drowning in mortgage jargon. In the last video, we covered different ways to use the VA loan. So now let's talk about how a VA loan actually gets approved. So, one of the biggest mistakes that buyers make is thinking that approval is just about being eligible. It's not. Your eligibility matters, your certificate of eligibility matters, and your service history matters. But those things only tell us whether or not you may use the benefit. They don't automatically tell us whether your loan file will get approved. Approval is where the lender starts to ask a different set of questions. They're asking things like, can this borrower document their income? Does the credit profile support the file? Do the debts fit? Does the property work within the VA guidelines? Or is the file strong enough for the system, or does it need a closer look? That's why 2 borrowers can both be eligible for a VA loan and still have very different approval experiences. One may sail through, where another may need extra documentation, and another may need to improve something before they can move forward. And that's completely normal. So in this video, when I say 4 different ways to get approved, I'm not talking about 4 separate VA loan programs. I'm talking about 4 practical approval paths that most buyers typically fall into. The first way to get your VA loan approved is the most straightforward one. This is the borrower with a pretty clean file. That usually entails things like stable income, solid documentation, manageable or little to no debt, acceptable credit, and no major surprises jumping out of the file. This is the kind of file where the lender can review the documents, verify the information, and move things forward without a lot of drama. And let's be honest, everybody loves this version. This is the file where pay stubs make sense, tax returns are easy to find, bank statements are not chaotic, and the borrower is not sending over mystery deposits that require a whole new detective team. This does not mean that the borrower is perfect. It just means that the overall file is understandable, documentable, and reasonably strong. For a lot of W-2 borrowers with stable employment and decent credit, this is the most common path. You apply, you provide the documents, the lender reviews the file, and if the file checks out, the approval process moves on normally. That's path number 1. And if that's you, excellent. Try not to ruin it by opening 3 new credit cards and financing a truck in the middle of underwriting. The second way that a VA loan can get approved is through automated underwriting findings. Now that sounds technical, but here's the plain English version. When your lender enters your information into the system's going to evaluate your file based on a bunch of factors and may return findings that support moving the file forward. This is one reason that some files move more smoothly than others. The system is looking at things like your income, your assets, your credit, your liabilities, and the overall risk picture in the file. When a file comes back with strong enough findings, that can make the approval path much more efficient. Now, this does not mean that a computer replaces the lender, and it definitely does not mean that the loan is magically done. You still have to verify the information, you still have to have the documentation in file, you still have to satisfy the conditions, and the property still has to meet the requirements. But this is an important approval path because many buyers do not realize that part of the loan process involves how the file performs in the system. Some files fit cleanly into this path, where others don't. And when they don't, that doesn't automatically mean that the deal is dead. It just means that the approval path may look a little bit different. Now, the third way to get a VA loan approved is through a manual underwrite or a file that needs a much closer review. This is where the process gets more human and more detailed. Maybe the file doesn't fit perfectly through the automated findings. Maybe income is a bit more complex, or the credit score has some scars. Maybe there's a recent event that requires explanation, and maybe the borrower is strong overall, but the file needs more context to make sense. This path is important because a lot of veterans assume that the file is not super clean, that they're automatically out. It's not always the case. Sometimes the file just needs stronger documentation, better explanation, and a closer review. This is where things like written explanations, more detailed income docs, stronger compensating factors, or a clearer file presentation can become very important. And this is one reason that working with someone who understands VA loans matters, because not every lender or loan officer explains this part very well. A layered file does not always mean that it's a bad file. Sometimes it just means that the file needs to be built properly. This is especially relevant for borrowers who are self-employed, coming off of prior credit issues, dealing with more complex service-related income, or working through a less conventional overall scenario. Again, this path can involve more documentation, more conditions, and more patience. But is it still a real approval path? Yes. And the fourth way to get approved is one that people don't talk about enough. You're not ready today, but you get ready, and then you get approved. And this is a huge one, because too many buyers think that the answer is either yes, approved today, or no, never. And that's not how real lending works. Sometimes the right answer is just not yet. And honestly, not yet can be incredibly valuable if somebody tells you exactly what you need to improve to meet that approval requirement. Maybe you need to pay down a little bit of your debt, clean up a credit issue, wait for a little bit more job history, document your income more clearly, save a little bit more money, fix an error on your credit report, or simply stop doing financial cartwheels for 60 days. That is still a path to approval, and in a lot of cases, it's the smarter path because it puts you in a stronger position instead of forcing a weak deal too early. This is one of the biggest mindset shifts that buyers need. Getting approved is not always about forcing the file through today. Sometimes it's about preparing the file correctly so that the approval becomes much easier later on. And that's not failure, that's just strategy. All right, now let's make all of this practical. Example number one, a straightforward file. Let's say a veteran has stable W-2 income, decent credit, low to moderate debt, clean documents, and enough funds for closing costs where needed. That borrower may move through the process in a very standard and straightforward way, and that follows path number one. Number two is strong automated findings. Now imagine another borrower whose file performs well in the automated system. The numbers fit, the risk profile is acceptable, the documentation supports the story. That file may move efficiently through the approval process, even though it still has conditions to clear. And that's path number two. Example number three is a layered but workable file. Now, take a borrower that had a past credit event, more complex income, maybe some extra questions in the file, but overall a reasonable explanation and strong supporting documents. That file may need a closer human look with more conditions and a stronger presentation, but it may still be approvable. And that's path number three. Now example number four, like we just talked about, is not ready yet, but fixable. Picture a borrower who wants to buy now, but the file has issues. They have too much debt, their credit score is too low, their job history is too short, or their documentation is just incomplete. That does not always mean game over. It may mean pay this down, wait a little bit longer, document this better, and come back stronger. And that's path number four. And honestly, a good lender should be able to help you understand which of these buckets you're actually in. But before we wrap up, here are some mistakes that can make approval harder than it needs to be. Mistake number one is confusing your eligibility with approval. We've said it before, but it's worth repeating. Being eligible for the VA loan benefit does not automatically mean that you're approved for the loan. Mistake number 2 is sending incomplete or messy documentation. If your lender asks for documents, send the complete documents, not screenshots missing page 2, not cropped files, and not mystery uploads named Stuff Final 2. Clean files move better through the process. Mistake number 3, changing your finances during the process. Don't add any new debt. Don't finance furniture. Don't buy a new vehicle because you got excited. And don't make the underwriter discover your side quest halfway through underwriting. Mistake number 4, assuming a difficult file means no path. Sometimes the path is just different. Different does not always mean dead. And mistake number 5, waiting too long to ask questions. A lot of problems are easier to solve early on than they are later in the process. If something in your income, credit, or service record looks unusual, it's far better to address it up front than to pretend it doesn't exist and hope that nobody finds out. So, if you remember one thing from this video, remember this. There is not just one single approval experience for every VA buyer. In general, your file may get approved through one of these 4 paths. A clean, straightforward file, a file that performs well through automated underwriting, a file that needs a manual review, or a file that's not ready yet but can become ready with the right preparation. That's why understanding your situation clearly matters so much, because the goal is not just to apply, the goal is to apply in the strongest way possible. In the next video, we're going to break down the VA funding fee, what it is, why it exists, when it applies, and why so many veterans misunderstand it. And yes, that topic causes confusion every week. So if this video helped you, drop a comment below and tell me this. Which approval path sounds most like your situation right now? If you know another veteran who thinks getting approved is just one simple yes or no process, send them this video. Subscribe to the channel if you want the full VA Loan Masterclass, and check the links in the description if you need help with your specific scenario, and I'll see you on the next hole.